America still has a political center, and it is the key to winning the next elections. That's not my quote, but it could be. After all, from me, you hear constant preaching that a plurality of Americans regard themselves as independent rather than Republican or Democrat. 43% check the I box compared to, according to Gallup, compared to 28% who say D or 28% who say R. And from me, you've also heard about the massive hidden tribes data based on a sample of 8,000 respondents, which found that only 14% of the country resides on the polar extremes. 86% of the rest of us are somewhere in the middle. And from me, you've heard about research like that from Dr. Morris Fiorina at Stanford. He wrote a book called Unstable Majorities, arguing that the populace has not significantly shifted its views in the last half century, but the parties have. They've sorted themselves. They've become more extreme. No, the new articulation that Democrats need to moderate comes from no friend of President Trump, but rather the editorial page of the New York Times. Theirs is a cautionary tale for Democrats from an oracle that sees danger in the current commander-in-chief, who it says threatens American democracy. So what did they do? The Times analyzed every House election last year. They defined the ideology of candidates based on where they got their money. And what did they find? That in election after election, moderates in both parties fared better than candidates further from the center. In most congressional elections, the winner comes from the same party that won the district in the presidential election, except for 16 candidates. Democrats who won in districts that backed Trump, Republicans who won in districts that backed Harris. And what did all 16 have in common? They're moderates. In today's political climate, where the House majority tends to have paper-thin lead in the last 3 elections, no party won by a margin of more than 9 seats. Even 16 seats out of 435 can make all the difference. But now imagine if Democrats took the data to heart and thought instead of pushing candidates to the extremes, we had them move toward the center. Because in the age-old debate among politicos over whether it's persuasion or turnout that matters most in elections, the Times has just made a compelling case for persuasion. Why? As I read this, think if you check these boxes. America still has a political center, argues the New York Times. Polls show that most voters prefer capitalism to socialism, check. Worry that the government is too big, check. Also think that corporations and the wealthy have too much power, check, check. Most voters oppose both the cruel immigration enforcement of the Trump administration and the lax Biden policies that led to a record immigration surge. Most favor robust policing to combat crime and recoil at police brutality. Most favor widespread abortion access and some restrictions late in pregnancy. Most oppose race-based affirmative action and support class-based affirmative action. Most support job protections for trans people and believe that trans girls should not play girls' sports. And finally, most want strong public schools and the flexibility to choose which school their children attend. I don't know about you, I checked every single one of those boxes. Yet even with President Trump's approval rating underwater, according to Gallup, it's holding steady at about 41%, Democrats still can't seem to capitalize on that. This is in part, as the Times argues, that the party lacks credibility. Why? Because Democrats are perceived as being too liberal, too judgmental, and too focused on cultural issues. Again, that's the New York Times saying this. And no, focusing on economic issues is not a sufficient salve. Democrats cannot point to a single member of Congress or governor from a swing district or swing state who's been able to pursue that strategy and win.